So this is going to be a review session specifically about the Cold War and the kind of big events surrounding it. Specifically, we'll start with kind of the foreign Cold War, so like what's actually happening around the world. And then if we have time, we'll go to some of the domestic changes at home. So the war ends, and immediately the big questions are surrounding what's going to happen to East Europe, right? The U.S. hopes that East Europe will gain independence, they'll have free elections. But the Russian leader, Stalin, he refuses free elections in these places. And quickly it becomes obvious that Russia is going to control these Eastern European nations and they have to do whatever they want. They're called satellite nations. And so Stalin is trying to maintain power in these countries and trying to keep the power and to grow its power, including what happens to Germany. Now, this is not going to be a historically accurate map of Germany, but remember, Germany is like split up into different sections, right? Okay, it does not look like squares, but let's just pretend that we have all these different sections of Germany controlled by the different allies, including East Germany, which is controlled by the Russians. And what's unique about East Germany? It has Berlin that is also split up, right? And Russia doesn't like this because they want control over all of Berlin. So what does Stalin try to do? He does not the wall, the blockade. Yeah, the wall comes later. First, they're doing a blockade to stop the supplies from getting to Berlin. He's going to try to starve Berlin so that the Americans will just give in and allow the Russians to control all of Berlin. Again, this is in the Cold War, so one wrong move could lead to World War III. This is probably the closest we came to war in the 40s and 50s. Closest to the not cold. Let's just go this here. Closest to World War III in the 1940s, right? Because if we have some random general who decides, oh, I'm just going to plow through this blockade, then we're going to war. So what do they do to get the food to the people? They do the airlift, right? And so they avoid the fighting. And so the United States is going to look for ways to stop the spread of communism. What's our new foreign policy called? Containment, which has 2 points. Stop the spread of communism. And what else? Don't try to convert or don't help countries that are already communist. Okay, so the number one, stop spread of communism. There's a few different ways we're going to do that. One way is through money. There's a couple different examples of using money to stop countries from turning communist. What's one example? Greece and Turkey, which is called what? Truman Doctrine. So giving money to Greece and Turkey. And that worked so well, so what happened? We then gave money to who? Not yet. Not yet. Basically all the other Western European countries in the Marshall Plan. Why don't we give money to Eastern Europe? They're already communists. We don't help countries that are already communists. And that was successful. So when China is under threat of becoming communist, what do we do there? We give money and supplies. Work? No, it failed. China turned to communist. And so they said, okay, well, maybe next time we can't just give money. Number two is alliances. There's a couple different like alliances or international organizations that we talked about. What's one of them? NATO is the big one. North Atlantic Treaty Organization. It's basically all the capitalist countries in Western Europe and in North America, because Canada and US are in it as well. So if one country's attacked, everybody else will join in. What's the other like international peacekeeping body? What was it? United Nations. Is Russia in that one? Yes, Russia is in this one. So everybody's in the United Nations. Russia's not in NATO, right? So we're using United Nations to kind of put everybody's pressure on communist countries like, hey, we want you to do this, or we don't like what you're doing to Berlin here. And we use NATO as a defense alliance to say, if you attack one of us, you're attacking all of us, right? So we're using alliances to stop the spread of communism. We're going to use the arms race to stop the spread of communism. For example, NSC 68, which was a recommendation for the president to spend a lot more money on our military, to continue to build up our military. And they do. They create new weapons like the hydrogen bomb, even bigger than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Right? So the idea is by creating more weapons that neither country would actually ever attack, because they know that if someone attacks, everyone's going to die. Okay, this is called, I don't think we wrote it down, mutually assured destruction. Basically, all life on Earth ends. So we don't want to do that. So we don't do the stuff that could lead to it. Okay. This is going back to what happened after China. China failed in just giving money and supplies. So when Korea is under threat of communism, what do we do there? We send, what is it? We send soldiers. So we do this with Korea. Does that work? Kind of. Like North Korea was already communist, so we weren't necessarily trying to turn them capitalist. We kind of did when we went and invaded them too. So we're like, let's just keep going. But South Korea remained capitalist. They did not turn communist. So people see that as a victory. Like, okay, that worked. Next time this happens, where a Eastern European or Eastern Asian country might turn communist, let's send in our military. I'm sure that'll be fine. Not a problem or controversial. Oh wait. Let's see. Let's talk about, I think that's it for containment. Any questions on containment? Let's look at the Cold War at home. Okay. We have lots of effects of the Cold War at home. For example, President Eisenhower, in his farewell address, warns America What does he warn them about?
Production companies.
So these war supply companies gaining too much power. He coined it as the military industrial complex. Okay, these war companies get lots of power if they make war supplies, and so if they have too much power, could we get into a war that maybe we shouldn't be in because they have too much power? And so he is afraid of both countries' growth of nuclear weapons, that's just going to lead to the growth of the military industrial complex. That as both countries in the arms race build up their nuclear bombs, build up their atom bombs, hydrogen bombs, that's just going to feed the military industrial complex. And so after the farewell address, what happens? Do we listen to him? No. It continues, right? The military companies continue to gain power, become more focused on the military weapons. Okay, we talked a lot about the Red Scare and people who are afraid of communists. So there is a fear at home. Anyone could be a communist. We talked about a couple people or groups that were looking for communists. What's one of those people or groups? What was it? HUAC was one. And HUAC looked at different groups, including labor unions, New Deal programs, and Hollywood, to see, are there communists there? They're afraid that Hollywood could be making secret communist propaganda movies. And so they're going to question people and ask them, are you a communist? Have you ever been a communist? Who else was looking for communists? Loyalty Security Board. Who did they investigate? Government workers. Who else looked for communists? There's a person from Wisconsin. Joe McCarthy. McCarthy, right? He's going to accuse people of communists. He would say, I have a list of 200 communists, right? Did he have any evidence? No, he didn't share anything, at least. Okay. He's especially going to accuse people in the government of being communists, especially in the State Department. Okay. His famous speech is called "The Enemies from Within," where he would say there are enemies within the national government. This shows our anxieties of communism, right? This fear that Americans were just like, oh, yeah, of course there's communists. There have to be, when there really weren't that many. When else have we been really afraid of the spread of communism in America? Yeah, in the 1920s, there was the Red Scare after World War I. Remember, there was the Palmer raids. And so just like how after World War I, we're afraid of the communist spread, we're the same thing. After World War II, we're afraid of the communist spread again. Okay, so after a World War, we're afraid of communists. Okay, both times. Okay. Any questions, everybody, before we're done for today? We're good? Okay.